Hi, it's Andy, and today I'm bringing you my July wrap-up. In July, I managed to read 12 books or things, because there was a little novella in there, a short story as well. So I'm really happy with that, although we did have one serious DNF. PSA before I even start, if you can hear my fan on my computer, it's having a hard time. Just give it a break. It's fine. We're fine. It's fine. It's warm, as you can see. I'm in a like tank top because I'm really warm. So yeah, please pray for my computer. If you saw my July TBR, you will know that this is the month that my friends chose my TBR, and I'm happy to say that I read most of the books on that TBR. There was a couple that ended up not getting read. So Paris Dalincourt is about to crumble. I did not read because it is the second in a companion series, and we made the decision that I should read the first one first, and then I'll go back and read Paris Dalincourt afterwards. I also ended up not reading The Shadow Cabinet just because it's been staring at me and intimidating me for so long, and I just talked myself out of it. It's still on a running TBR, so I've still got it in my book bestie. I've still got the audiobook. I'm just going to read it when the mood strikes because I know I'm going to love it, but I just want to dedicate some time to it. So those two immediately got taken off the TBR. But I'm so happy to say that I did in fact read the rest of them. First thing I read in July was my reread of Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This was not a pick for me. This was meant to be read in the month before, in June, but I really wanted to watch this. I really wanted to read this before the movie came out, so I decided to take it with me on holiday and reread it, and I pretty much read nothing on the time I was away and read it all when I came back. But again, 5 stars. I loved it even more this time. This is a story about the first son of the United States and the sort of second in line to the throne of England. It's very much like an alternate universe between Alex and Henry, who are the main characters. If you didn't already know, I'm messing this up already. We're 2 minutes into the video. It's fine. But yeah, so this is about Alex and Henry, who do not like each other. In fact, they kind of hate each other, and they get into a slight altercation at the royal wedding, and their respective families tell them that they are going to make good, and they are going to show the public that they are best friends, that they are, you know, buddy, and that was just a complete accident. Although to be fair, it was an accident. Like, it wasn't, they didn't mean to knock over the cake, but it's fine. And obviously it just ends up with these two falling in love. Alex doesn't even know he's into guys until Henry, and it's just a fantastic story. I think it does a really good job of showing what it's like to be in the spotlight and what it's like to sort of discover your sexuality. I just love this. I really love this, and I can't wait to watch the movie. Next up, I decided to read The Neanderthals Rediscovered, How Scientific Revolution is Rewriting Their Story. Man, that is a mouthful. This is by Dimitra Papagianni and Michael A. Morse, who are a husband-wife team of anthropologists, archaeologists, and generally book writers. And there's been such large jumps in the story of the Neanderthals in the last 50 years that they wanted to sort of update, and this is I think the 3rd edition of this book that they've written. So the audiobook that I was listening to along with this had some sections that weren't there, so I would pause the audiobook, read it, and then play the audiobook again. But to be fair, I feel like this missed the mark. It was supposed to make things a lot clearer for people, like one grab of an image of the Neanderthals, and I think it just did not do that very well. It was fragmentary, and it's very small. It's very small. It's a 200 odd page book, and by 200 odd I mean like 215-16 pages, and it just wasn't enough to do it justice. I would read this book if they were to flesh it out and make it, 500 pages plus, because that's what it needs to do it justice. So that's a shame. Then next I read The Bride Test by Helen Huang, and I read that for the read along that Chloe is hosting. Next month will be the last one, and that's her principal, but for this month it was The Bride Test, and I absolutely love this. This book is about Kai and Ismay, who are sort of thrown together by Kai's mum. She goes to Vietnam to try and find him a wife and finds Ismay, who is cleaning the toilets, and says to her, come over to the US, seduce my son, be his wife, and, you know, I'll get you a visa, basically. And Esme's like, well, why not? I've got a daughter that I need to look after. I'll do anything for her. So she agrees. And yeah, obviously they fall for each other. Kai in this is an autistic character because Helen Huang writes romances with one autistic character and one neurotypical character. In this case, it's Kai that is autistic and Esme who is neurotypical. She also doesn't quite understand what autism is because it's in her life, she's never come across it before. So it's a whole learning curve for her as well, learning how to be around someone who is not the same as her. It's really, really interesting. It's a really nice look at the difference in culture and the way that, you know, a Vietnamese person from Vietnam is very different from a Vietnamese person who's been raised in the US. It was just so interesting. The romance was really, really good, and I just loved the two characters. I loved their drive. I loved the way that you got to see how they think. I love how petty Kai is about the... I'd check, it was definitely Kai. I love how petty he is about his driveway, because we all have a neighbour like that, don't we? Well, I don't really have a neighbour like that, but I know neighbours like that. Anyway, loved it. Really looking forward to the Heart Principle because it has Kwan in it, who is Kai's big brother and my favourite character. Then I finally did it. I finished Vengeful by V. Schwab. This was the Schwab-along book for this month. Try and say that 5 times fast. My god. This was the Schwab-along book for July, and I really, really enjoyed this. It was not my favourite because it jumped around a lot, but I feel like this is one that definitely needs a reread, and I'm going to be more than happy to reread these books again at some point. But I'm so glad to get through it. I'm interested in what's to come in the next book because I know Schwab is meant to be writing another book, and yeah, I just really, really, really enjoyed this. I then also read Warm Up, which is a villain's story. It follows one of the characters that we sort of briefly see through Vicious and Vengeful. I can't remember where it is we see him, but it's very, very quick, a very, very quick sort of 15-page story about him. Really, really enjoyed it. Again, Schwab is just excellent with characters and the way that they are able to bring these people to life. Next up was my buddy read of Fake It Till You Bake It by Jamie Wesley, and I buddy read this with Meg and Lisa. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this because on the one hand it was a good, fun, quick read. On the other hand, it was very formulaic and unsurprising. There's a few things I had issue with, but my overall takeaway was that I enjoyed it, and I loved the atmosphere of the cupcake shop and this relationship, this very antagonistic relationship that they had. But I feel like I've read this sort of story done better by other authors. Wouldn't count out reading any more of this author's work, but for me this just didn't hit where I wanted it to. But still, it was like a 3-star, so that's not a bad thing. Next up, I read Goldilocks by Laura Lamb, and this by far was the biggest surprise of the month. I loved this. This gave me very much like Project Hail Mary meets something else vibes, and I can't remember what something else is. Becky Chambers. This was like Project Hail Mary meets Becky Chambers. The writing style was very much indicative of Andy Weir, while the story was very indicative of what you'd expect from Becky Chambers' Wayfarer series. In fact, if you told me that this was a Wayfarer's novel, I would believe you, other than the fact that the writing style wasn't very Becky Chambers. Absolutely love this. This kind of shows us what's going to happen to the world. It is a world where the world is dying and we've found another planet that we can go to, and these 5 women who have been taken off the project decide to steal the ship and go. But things aren't as they all seem, and things get a little bit tense and horrible on the ship. It's just, I cannot describe this book to you very well, but if you like Becky Chambers, if you like Andy Weir, you should pick up this book. If you're interested in climate change and feminist works, you should read this book. It was fantastic. My next read was Dial A For Aunties by Jessie Sutanto. This was exactly what I needed after the heaviness of Goldilocks. This was absolutely hilarious, and not once did I predict what was going to happen. Like, not once. This is about a main character whose name I cannot remember, Medi. This is about Medi, who accidentally kills her date on a blind date and comes home to her mum to tell her what happened. Her mum calls her aunties, and her aunties help her get rid of the body. And this is effectively a spoof in written form. This is a mystery thriller spoof. Like, there's no other way about it. It is absolute hilarity. It's things that would never ever happen in real life. Very similar in that way to Feel Like Donovan Is Killing It, except this was funnier. And the Asian auntie thing with it as well was just so funny. I've seen people say that it's very, very like spot on, and Jesse Sutanto themselves say that the aunties are based on their aunties, like people they know, and it's so funny. Like, please just read this book. It will not, I swear to you, you'll not figure out what's going to happen next, because it's just absolutely wackadoodle. And then I read A Witch's Guide to Fake Date a Demon, which was one of my favourite reads of the month, hands down. This gave me very much vibes of the X-Hex. It's that whimsical, small town, families, like very important families, founders, that sort of thing, but set against a fantastical background, so that this place is on ley lines, and so it is very, very populated with magical creatures, witches, wizards, different fae types of creatures, and that's all perfectly normal in this fantasy world. It is our world, but with fantasy, and I really, really, really love that. And our witch is supposed to be one of the most powerful witches of her time, and yet she can't do a simple spell. And then she accidentally summons a demon, and they end up kind of fake dating while he's trying to get her to make a deal for her soul, and her mum thinks that he's her boyfriend, and it's just a bit crazy. Again, this book does not go where you think it's going to go, and the way they banter with each other, the way they speak to each other, it is very like 90s, early 2000s. I said it gave me like Buffy the Vampire style, like banter between like Spike and Buffy, but if Spike wanted something from Buffy. Like, think of the like out for a walk bitch. Like, I can't remember which direction he goes in. Out for a walk bitch. You know, that sort of conversation between the two of them. It's just so funny. I love this. Thank you so much to Meg for recommending this to me, and it's absolutely hilarious. Please read this. It has got my sense of humour all the way through it. Next up, I read Mina At The Undead by Amy McCaw. This book, I don't know if it was me or if it was the book, but this book just felt like a running narrative of the plot. And I know that sounds like, Andy, that's what a book's meant to be. But literally, it was like bang, 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 bang. All these things that they wanted to get into this book, they just ran one after the other, after the other, after the other, with no linking scenes, nothing to get you there. And I've been saying, like, had it not been for the fact that I know what New Orleans looks like through other media, I would not have any clue what the atmosphere was like in this book, because it's not written in. I don't know what anything looks like other than the fact that it was a shotgun house. That I don't know what that is. You don't just tell me it's a shotgun house and leave it at that. I don't know what that is. You need to tell me. You need to show me. I do want to reread this book at some point, and I will be reading Mina and the Slayers this month coming. Hopefully it's just been me not vibing with the book very well, and I was tired, and maybe in a reread it'll make more sense, but it fell short for me from what I was expecting, and I know other people love this book. Again, it was a 2.5 star, not the worst, and I will give it another chance. It's just that it felt like effectively a slightly fleshed out list. Then I picked up Read Between the Lines. I read most of this in audio because it had the Kindle Unlimited had the audio available, and I read this in the car on the way to Vicky's and on the way back from Vicky's, and then after I was at Vicky's, and I absolutely love this. This is a female romance with Rosie and Jane, who don't like each other very much. Well, Rosie doesn't like Jane because Jane has given her an eviction notice, and Rosie's had this bookshop in her family for like 30 years, so she obviously doesn't want to leave. But Rosie has also been speaking online to her favourite author, Bree. And what they don't know is that Jane is Bree. So Jane is Bree and Rosie is speaking to her online. Jane doesn't know it's Rosie, and Rosie doesn't know Jane is Bree, and it just... They obviously like fall for each other online and then like dislike each other kind of normally, and then when they find out who each other are, it's like, uh-oh. And it's just, I really, really enjoyed this. Like, I really, really enjoyed this. The atmosphere, the way it was written, everything about it was just fantastic. Well, not quite everything about it. The some of the scenes were not that good. But that's a me thing. This story, again, is one of those stories that I didn't predict what was going to happen. I was like, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen, and it didn't. I even said to Kate, I was like, oh yeah, this is really predictable, and then it wasn't, and I was like, oops. So yeah, I thoroughly recommend this one. It was really, really good, and I'm looking forward to picking up the next one. And then we got kind of a bummer. I decided to officially DNF Chosen Ones by Veronica Roth. I only got about 80 pages in, 60, 80 pages in, and I just was not, it was like beating my head against a brick wall. It just was not doing it for me at all, so I decided to DNF this. Saving what is probably the best for last so that we can end on a high note. The last book I read in the month of July was Imogen, obviously, by Becca Albertalli. This book, this was not anything like I expected. I expected it to be something along the lines of Simon and Leah, and it just wasn't. It was kind of like, it was very similar to Simon in that we're talking about Imogen and Imogen's sexuality and, you know, the way that's all kind of put together, but Becca likes to say this is like a love letter to bisexual teens, and I absolutely get that. I said, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna, you know, I don't know if I'm gonna vibe with the book the same way, because I feel like I didn't have the same experience, but oh boy, does this cover a lot. I was angry, I was sad, I was laughing, I was hitting myself on the head with this book, because I was like, Imogen, why? And I was like, Andy, that was you. Like, me reading this book was slightly unhinged, and then I got so mad at Gretchen. Like, don't be a Gretchen. Read this book and don't be a Gretchen. That's all I can say. This book, absolutely fantastic. 5 stars. I cannot say enough about this book. This book just really, really shows a fantastic experience of what it's like to be bisexual. And even for me, I'm pansexual and demisexual, and I never understood the whole, like, for ages I thought, like, oh yeah, like, I'm an ally, blah, 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 not realising that I wasn't, because I wasn't given the chance to explore anything. I wasn't given the chance to find out, because I had a friend that was like, this is the way to be bisexual, and therefore you are not bisexual. And to be fair, I'm not bisexual, and I don't experience bisexuality or pansexuality in the same way as everybody else, because no one does. And this is a fantastic glimpse of that, because there are multiple queer characters in this who all experience similar labels in very different ways. And Gretchen's that friend, you know, that friend. But luckily, she also has Lily, and this book, it really, really got to me. This was a fantastic story told by Becky about probably what is close to her experience as well, and it really hits different as well, knowing that Becky was sort of pulled out of the closet by people who didn't think she should be writing queer stories as a straight woman. She wasn't a straight woman. She's never been a straight woman. She just didn't tell you that, and she doesn't owe you that. She doesn't owe anybody that. It's the same thing that happened to Kit Connor. It's the same thing that's happened to multiple celebrities, that they've had to out themselves so they can justify what they're doing, and that's not right. As a community, we are responsible to look after each other, and we should not be assuming that the default is straight. You know, if you're going to assume that somebody's default is straight, you need to look at yourself, because that's a you problem. But yeah, if you are queer in any way, I seriously suggest you read this. I finished this and told Kay's friend she picked it up the other day, and I was like, tell her she needs to read this right now. And then she read it and she was like, oh my god. And I was like, right. At the end of the day, all I'm saying is listen to Becca. It's just listen to the Becca. It's fine. It's fine. So that is it. That is my July wrap up. That is month 7 of reading. I'm 112 books in, and I am so chuffed with the way I'm enjoying the books I'm reading. I am learning that I need to trust my friends when it comes to my reading taste, because overall, this was a fantastic reading month, and it's things that I wouldn't normally have picked up if it hadn't been for the fact that my friends were like, I think you'll like this. And there's things in this like A For Aunties, Fake It Till You Bake It, Mina, Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon, the Helen Huang, book and Schwabbalong and Goldilocks, like most of this TBR is things that I wouldn't have picked up on my own that other people have told me to read. So yeah, well done to my friends for picking this TBR for me. You did a great job, and I will probably try and listen to you more from here on out. In honour of Imogen, obviously, I decided just to go and get my flag, my little pan flag, to wear to do my outro. And just say as well, if you want to let me know you were here but don't have anything to say, just leave the rainbow flag in the comments, because we're here, we're queer, get used to it, as Jack would say. From Will and Grace, please tell me you're old enough to remember Will and Grace. Anyway, but yeah, I'm gonna go, and thank you very much for watching this, and I will see you in the next video.